Hey everyone, I hope you are having a good day. This is a Q&A session for fencing theory, movement, things like that. We've covered a lot of information over the last 3 months on our live stream classes as well as our regular classes for the Patreon page. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to open it up to you. And it's been a while since you've been in swinging a sword or doing any of the martial arts with us. And I'm hoping this will be an opportunity that you can revisit the theoretical as well as the practical side with us. So we're going to hopefully be able to do some Q&A with people, and I hope that you will enjoy it. One of the things that I did want to bring up is that Santa Clara County has moved us into stage 2 of reopening. So outdoor activities are available again to go to attend and be a part of. However, we are a gym and therefore we're not able to open quite yet. We open in stage 3, but hopefully soon we'll be able to reopen. And the instructors and I had a meeting over Zoom, and we talked about the process that we're going to go through for reopening. We're going to write up our plan for safety, for everyone's safety while we're training. And to help with it, and because we have the opportunity of where the school is, we're going to be at the school, but we're going to be working outside. This will allow us to maintain the appropriate social distancing. We'll be able to train, and because we're using swords, we'll be able to keep that distance of 6 feet. One of the things that I am going to ask people to do when they come in to train is wear a mask. And I am currently working with a company to get a bunch of masks where I will provide masks to the students for coming in and joining us. It'll have our logo on it, and I'm looking forward to getting those so that I can hand them out to you when we all come back to training. John, we've done in our training, we've done sword work, we've done footwork, we've done cuts, we've talked about small adjustments of the foot. Mm-hmm. When we're doing those things, we just did another demo today for some people where just the turn of the toe affects your measure and your opponent's measure. But is there anything that you wanted to, any rabbit holes you wanted to follow on the footwork, distance, or anything else that we've worked on?
There's so many that I want to travel there, but it's hard to choose a lot of the time.
Well, just pick one.
We've traveled in the portions there. Going more into detail about how we're changing the difference between overall distance and target distance and target measure there.
Okay.
So that's a really important thing, I think, to help a lot of people understand and see what we mean from that there, because we can also talk about that in the same as gross motor and fine motor in that same place.
Yes.
But mark into measure. So I think that'd be a really fun rabbit hole to kind of hop down a little bit more on.
So overall distance. When we take a position, the way we think about it here is that our lead foot is our back foot. Because we're not now where I'm going to step after this position. So my lead foot is my back foot when I step. And overall distance is the distance that you want to maintain between you and your opponent so that you have to take a step to hit them, and vice versa, they need to step to hit you. Why do you want them to have to step to hit you? Or why do you want to have to step to be able to hit them?
So that I have time to be able to put in defense or be able to counter what they're going to retaliate with.
Right. So if we start in the distance where we can just hit them, closest target distance, in Renaissance rapier fighting, fencing, they call it pia firma, firm-footed. I'm not moving my foot, it's all through the lean of my body or something like that. So pia firma. If I'm at pia firma, I am unable to have the time to respond to whatever they do. This takes us back to a gentleman by the name of Ed McGivern. Have I talked to you about him?
I don't believe so.
Ed McGivern was a Midwestern rancher in the, I think it was the 30s. And I've got his book in the library, and he was fascinated with the Old West gunfighters. He wanted to know, how did somebody become fast? What is fast? And we think of fast as speed, but fast is really perception.
Yeah.
So he did his research into the Old West quick draw, and he broke it down into tenths of a second. So I decide I want to pull my gun and shoot you. It takes a tenth of a second for me to create the thought. It takes a tenth of a second for the neural impulse to travel from my brain to my hand. And it takes a tenth of a second for my hand to pull my gun to shoot you. So at the highest possible speed, that's not the word I want. The fastest I could possibly be is 3/10 of a second.
Yeah.
However, if I'm responding to you, so we are going to draw our guns on the count of 4, and you begin your action, I'm already 2/10 of a second at the fastest behind you.
And so therefore you are always going to be, for one of the, in that perception, slower
Yes.
than me.
So I need to position myself in such a way through distance that I have that time to see what's happening, register what's happening, create the thought. That's when my 3/10 of a second start. Create the thought, send the impulse to my body, and then my body does the action. So I need to maintain distance that allows me to do that.
And so that distance is the ability to actually now have time
Yeah,
to work inside of what you're doing.
right. And that's only if I'm young and fast enough to be at 3/10 of a second. Now, we just got joined by Brandon, and he asks, how do you deal with multiple entities in a fight, whether it be two or enemies, sorry, or whether it be 2 or more enemies, your comrades or some poor. So that's a good question. And I want to break that into 2 different parts. So we have our, let's say I'm fighting 2 people, John and his friend. If I've got multiple opponents, the last thing I want them to do is get me to be able to focus on one while the other comes and blindsides me or hits me from the back. So the best thing I can do is get them either in a line so that one guy's in front of the other and therefore in his way, or create the distance I need and the time I need to be able to respond to one without having to worry about the second one. And there's actually a great line about this in The Outlaw Josie Wells. You remember that movie?
Very rare, a little bit.
Great movie. You got to watch it again. So Josie Wells is getting supplies, and he's an outlaw. He's on the walkway in front of the store, and he's a Confederate, and he's wanted by the Union Army. And there's, I think, 4 or 5 Union soldiers that just kind of come around the corner, and they're all staring at him. He's got 2 armloads of groceries, and they just stare at each other for a moment. And then he drops and he shoots one guy. The other guys look at him, look at the guy that just got shot because surprise, and then he's able to shoot them. Somebody watching asked, "Why'd you shoot him first?" He goes, "He had crazy eyes." So I can create time by attacking one person viciously and hard so that I drive him away. That pulls me away from his buddy. And it can also create shock where he's so surprised by that launched attack that he doesn't move right away. So I throw this attack at the one that I start with, for whatever reason I choose him, and I hit hard, hard, hard just to get space. And by the time this guy behind me registers what's happening and launches his attack, I'm able to turn around and attack into him, and now I've reduced it to one adversary.
And that's similar in the same position there as putting them in a line, right? You're now able to turn the focus into being able to deal with one adversary at a time.
Right, because I can only deal with one guy at a time. Yeah. It doesn't matter how good you are. You can't beat 3 or 4 people if they're all attacking you at the same time.
It's not going to happen.
You know, even 2 people attacking you at the same time is really hard if I don't put them in a line. But that's if I've got 2 enemies. I can either line them up, so this guy, if they're facing me here, right, we start this way and then I move around so they're like this. This guy back here can't hit me now without hitting his friend. And that allows me to deal with one. Or if I've got them here, I can attack this guy so hard that when he comes in after me, I'm able to turn around and I steal his time and his distance. And then this guy has to cover all that distance to get back into me.
As well as the potential of recovering his own stance and his own position in that there.
Right.
Bring himself back in mentally from that onslaught.
Yeah, mental is important too, because if I throw hard, fast attacks at this guy and he was in the mental state of we're already in control because there's 2 of us and 1 of you, or 3 of us, and that's actually more accurate, because if you watch videos online of people being jumped, it's almost always 3 to 1. And unfortunately, we saw that with Mr. Floyd as well.
Yes.
There were 3 cops on Mr. Floyd. And the 4th one, there just wasn't room for him. Yeah. That's that distance again. So it's not uncommon for it to be 3 to 1. You need to create that opening, that distance to give yourself time. This goes back to the original of back foot to back foot distance.
Yep. Or
overall distance. If, however, John and I are fighting somebody and they've done that to us, right? So I'm fighting, or John's fighting them and I'm behind John. I can't hit him without hitting John. Now I could just say, well, you know what, I'll get a new friend. But if we both survive, that could be problems later.
Be a little bit tense, I'd say.
So I've got to be very careful about not hitting my friend. I did a whole class years and years ago on body shields. And this was all unarmed or hawk and knife, right? So I'm being attacked by multiple people. I can create that opening, or I can line them up, or if I get in close, I can grab one guy, and if I can put him into a position that he becomes a body shield, the only way that his friends can hit me is by going through him. And I did this in a fight once, a sword fight at a school demonstration. Wasn't one of the brightest moments of my life, but I asked all the students who'd like to see me fight both of them. And there was 5 periods, so I did this 5 times. 4 of those times I died horribly. One time, I was able to get in close behind one of them, and use him as a body shield. So I actually covered with my sword, got in, did the Morozo beard pull, which is hook and turned his head, so it was up and back with my sword out here, so I had control of him. His partner, on the other hand, was not a nice person in this instance, so he stabbed him in the throat. And we had gorgets and everything, and he says to him, "I'm on your side, why'd you stab me?" And he said, "Because I knew his face was behind your throat." So if you're working with somebody like that, body shields aren't going to be the best, but most people aren't that bad. So you can create a body shield with your enemies. And let me show you one of the ways I like doing that. So we'll stand up. And we'll do this unarmed. But so John has his friends that are kind of fanned around me, and it's right, and it's all this kind of thing. So he's trying to keep me occupied so one of the flankers can hit me. Let's say this guy attacks me first, and he's coming in directly behind. So this guy attacks, I step this way. Here's our line. But I'm not stopping this guy. I'm setting him aside, knowing that he's coming in behind it. So as he does, I step in behind, and that allows me to now create a body shield. And if I get in here and I've got any kind of tool, I can stick it in. And now if I leave the blade in his body, it's going to really hurt. He's not going to bleed to death necessarily until I pull it out. And I don't, I can keep shanking him like a prison yard. But I don't want him to go down. I want him to be up on his feet. And what that means is if I've got him in here like this, every time one of his fins comes around, I just twist the knife a little bit. What's he going to do?
He's going to scream.
So now I have a body in the way. I have a chunk of meat protecting me. I have a shield. Plus, I also have the psychological effect of him, of his friends, hearing him screaming with that injury. So multiple opponents, it's also a good idea, it could be a good idea, to keep one of them on their feet to make sure that you've got something both physical and psychological between the two of you. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense to me. If you're able to work both the physical and psychological there, you're able to really shake the additional opponents in that place there and make them unwilling to want to come because of their friend's pain.
Yeah.
That begins to pull them out of that place of that overconfidence that they have you outnumbered and sets it back to this point there where that could or could have been me.
Yeah. Then we also get the psychological effect of watching our friend in that position.
And them in pain and everything, yeah.
So, as well as the auditory, right? And so I've pulled them out of that moment. And quite often, if you're in a fight, one of the best defenses is to break the moment. Pull them out of that moment of aggressiveness, if you can. And that can be done vocally, because the best fight is the fight you're not in. So you can break that moment vocally, you can break it visually, or you can break it combatively. So vocally, I'm walking along and I see this guy who makes me a little nervous, and I can puff up, but now, because I've puffed up, I run into where he might puff up as well, and now it just gets bigger and bigger until we have no other option than attacking. Kind of like with goats.
Yep.
They'll go up high and then drop in. They're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger until they crash. And we'll do the same kind of thing as humans. But if I can disrupt his thought process vocally, I can protect myself. And I know you've heard this story, but I was at a gas station one night after watching a movie. It was about 12:30 at night. And I pulled into this specific gas station to get air because my tire was low. I pulled into this station because I saw 2 cars and about 6 people. Right? Understand your surroundings. And that awareness is a good way to protect yourself. Well, like most gas stations, the air was where there's no light. So it was dark there. And as I'm putting air in the tire of my truck, I look over at the 6 people in the 2 cars, and they all get into cars and leave. So now I'm there 12:30 by myself in the dark, putting air into my tire, which means I'm bent over and looking at my tire, trying to keep the air connector on and watch the gauge to make sure I've got enough air in there. And as I'm doing that, I'm still looking around, but I see this young guy come walking towards me, baggy shirt, baggy shorts, and his hand tucked in the back of his shorts. There's no reason for anybody to walk like that at 12:30 at night unless they're trying to create intimidation, fear, and that's the best kind of attack because it's safest for him if I am so scared that I don't fight back. So I see him walking up, and I keep my eye on him, but I continue filling up my tire. Then, as I'm done, I let the air go back, I stand up, and I walk past his right shoulder. So he's coming at me this way, and my truck's here. I stand up, and I walk past this shoulder because his hand is back here. And if something happens, I know I can grab his shoulder. But I don't touch him, and I keep a little bit of distance between us. And as I walk past, I just look him in the eye, and I say, "How you doing?" He said, "Good." Because he didn't know how to respond to that, because I didn't do what he expected. So then he walked over to the air machine and tested it to make sure it was working. He had no vehicle, but this was his way of saving face, and I was all good with him saving face. Now, at the time, I had a CCW, so I had a pistol on my side as well. And one of the things about violent interactions is in that moment of uncertainty and fear, it's very easy to go to the highest level of combativeness. I could have drawn my pistol, but I didn't want to be in that situation. So I walked past him, got to the other side of my car and put my hand on my pistol just in case. At this point, he was just checking air, and I got in my truck and left. But there was no violence involved at all in that moment because I disrupted his thought process verbally. But if he had continued on into something, I'd positioned myself so that I was able to grab his arm and run him into my truck and bounce his head off the truck a couple times. So I can choose how to interact with my opponents. And that's why we see in martial arts, kias. Yeah, there's that exhalation of kia for hitting when I hit something, and that transfers that energy. It also draws a judge's attention. Mm-hmm. And we see that in fencing as well. Elah. When you see a fencer strike, those elah. And you don't need any more exhalation or force to drive the point of a small sword through somebody's chest. But what it does do is get the judge's attention. And it can also break the attention or the concentration of your opponent because all of a sudden there's this loud noise. It's like walking along and hearing a big boom. We all look around and, Depending on where you're at, you drop and get behind a car.
Yeah.
So it depends on where you're at and what kind of situation you're used to. So if you're looking at multiple opponents, you've got different options. And one of the ways that we practice that here at our school is a game called the zombie game. And this is something I picked up from a group called Scala St. George. What it is one person's in the middle and we have all the other people surrounding them. And they can only move as fast as a zombie. So it's not full speed. They can only do the certain attacks that the person in the center is comfortable with them doing. So the more experienced you are, everything. The newer you are, only one, maybe two attacks, and that's it. What, descending from right or left, that's all. And then the person in the middle needs to move around and defend himself against these attacks coming from different lines, from different angles, from in front of, beside, or behind him, and he has to be able to move. Is there anything you'd like to say about the zombie game?
It's also for me there. It's a fantastic tool of helping yourself just get calm in a lot of the stuff.
How so?
You're dealing with a lot of people just coming in from all around you. It can emotionally become a very tense place here. Psychologically, you're surrounded, you're covered, you don't have anything to do. And doing martial arts can be scary, especially doing swords and everything. There's tools.
Yeah.
We have a saying we say a lot here, homie's got a sword. Can be scary. So when you're with a lot of people in that situation and it's just coming in slow, it's allowing you to slowly build up and get comfortable in the place. Become accepting to the situation. And if you are calm and accepting that place, then you can start to change it for yourself in there.
And what's something that you found is important when you're working against multiple opponents? So important for you.
Important for me is never stop moving, never stop looking. Okay? When you have multiple people and everything there, you always need to look for an avenue where you can reduce the income, the amount coming towards you. So never stop moving, never stop looking, never stop seeing what's happening around you. So you know where to move yourself next.
And
so having that perception is a very important place to be.
And that's one of the hardest things about being in a fight is not getting that tunnel vision to just watch that one person that's in front of you, because if this is all I see, I'm never going to see anything else. Mm-hmm. And tunnel vision is a psychological response to that stimuli. Mm-hmm. There's a wonderful book called On Combat by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. And he talks about the physiological effects of being in a combative and a high stress situation. He's worked with police, federal investigators, the FBI, military. And part of what he talks about is that tunnel vision. The problem with tunnel vision is that I lose track of his friends. So what the zombie game does is allow us to practice with stress, but not necessarily fear.
Yep.
Would you agree?
I would agree, yes.
And that stress, another term that we could use, and it gets used a lot, is stress inoculation. Mm-hmm. We need to get used to the stress so that we can respond to it and not let it overwhelm us, which is a very easy trap to fall into.
It's a trap I've fallen into and still occasionally fall into right now in that system. You have to keep that inoculation moving, and by doing the things.
Yeah, and it's been proven through experimentation that we have quicker responses to our peripheral vision than we do to our direct vision. And if I'm talking to John and I'm just focused on him, and my friend over here has a set of keys or something, and he tosses them to me, I'm gonna get hit in the head by the keys. Or I'm gonna see them coming and then have to pull back my focus, gather myself, turn, refocus, and by that time, I don't have the time anymore. So by using our peripheral vision, we're able to keep a bigger view. And this is actually one of the tools that I use and I train people here at the school to use when judging fencing bouts. If we look at two fencers or we look at a fencer, we're going to miss at least 50% of the stuff because we're so focused on one person that we can't see what the other person's doing. Another version that we see of this a lot in training is people focusing on the sword.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's very easy to start focusing on the sword and then you start trying to follow the sword with your eyes, and there's no way you can keep up that
That's trying to
time.
follow like a finger extended here right now. Somebody's just constantly going to be moving here. It's impossible to track where this is going to be. By the time you're to where it is, it's always going to be somewhere else.
So it's very important for us to develop our peripheral vision skills. And we use it all the time driving. In fact, when you're driving, you can often feel when somebody's about to cut into your lane. And so we've got that peripheral vision, and there's just that lizard brain in the back of our head talking to us. We can use that in our fencing skills. And that will allow us to develop the stress inoculation, allow us to pay attention to what's going on around us without focusing on any one thing or developing that tunnel vision. It will also free up the muscle tenseness because you can't move when you're tense. Do you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. If your muscles are already tense, there's no ability to move them. They're already locked.
It's like in sword fighting, if I take an extended guard, I have nowhere else I can go from this extended guard. The only thing I can do now is retract it to extend again to strike. So this feels safe, but this is my physical equivalent of tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm.
Because in order to, or focus, in order to do anything else, I need to pull my focus back into myself before I turn somewhere else and then go. And realistically, by that time, it's already too late. So I hope that was something that you enjoyed. Brandon, thank you for the question. Thank you, John, for joining me.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoy this. If you have questions that you would like to ask but weren't able to get to the video, please send them along either to our Facebook group page, Davenport European Martial Arts School, or you can email them to info@swordfightingschool.com. So thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure. Thank you, John.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And all of you, stay safe, stay sane. We're almost to the end of this. Hopefully we'll be able to get back together very soon. But until then, all the best to you and yours. Thank you.